What would you do if the two people who were supposed to love you the most treated you like you never mattered? What if the home you grew up in suddenly became the place that pushed you out into the cold? This is the story of someone who lost everything: family, home, love, all in a single moment. But what happened years later, no one could have imagined. A secret, a betrayal, and a moment of truth that changed everything. And when the truth finally came out, the same people who once turned their backs were suddenly on their knees, begging. Trust me, you are ready for what happens at the end of this story. So before we begin, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support means the world to us, and it helps us bring you more powerful stories like this. Now, sit back, because this story will take you through pain, hope, betrayal, and a twist that will leave you speechless. Let's begin. My name is Elena Carter. I'm 37 years old, and 3 months ago, on a quiet Sunday evening, I found out that the people I had been sacrificing everything for had been rewriting my story behind my back for nearly 16 years. For 16 years, I sent money to my parents every single month. No reminders, no excuses, no missed payments. I worked late nights, skipped vacations, and said no to things most people my age said yes to, because family comes first, right? At least that's what I believed. But one conversation, just one careless conversation, showed me that while I thought I was helping my family survive, they were busy telling the world I had abandoned them. And by the time the truth came out, it didn't just change my life. It shattered my entire family. Before I tell you what happened, let me ask you something real quick. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, like your sacrifices never counted, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Your support really does mean a lot. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. All right, let me take you back. 16 years ago, I was 21 years old, sitting on the edge of a tiny mattress in a studio apartment in Detroit. My first real job had just started, entry-level position at a logistics company. The kind of job where you spend half your day answering emails and the other half pretending you know what you're doing. My paycheck wasn't huge, but to me, it felt like freedom. I still remember staring at that first deposit on my banking app like it was a miracle. And then my phone rang. It was my mom. "Sweetheart," she said, her voice already heavy with stress. "Things have been really tough here. Medical bills, mortgage payments, my dad's hours being cut at work, the same story I'd heard a dozen times growing up. So I did what I thought a good daughter should do. I sent them $500. That was the first transfer. The next month it was $800. A year later, it became $1,500. Eventually, it settled at $2,000 every single month. 16 years. Do the math. That's over $380,000. Money I earned through overtime shifts, promotions, side gigs, and sleepless nights staring at spreadsheets. But I never kept track of it the way you track a debt. To me, it wasn't money. It was love. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Because if I'm being honest, the favoritism in my family started long before the money. My younger brother Ryan was always the golden child. When I was 12, I asked for $20 for a science kit. My dad told me to figure it out. That same week, Ryan got a brand new PlayStation. When I was 17, I got accepted into a great university. I still remember holding that letter in my hands at the kitchen table. My heart was pounding. I thought they'd be proud. Instead, my dad leaned back in his chair and said something that stuck with me for years. "Elena, we can only afford one college tuition. And Ryan's the boy. He'll have a family someday." My mom nodded like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Yes, smart," she told me. "You'll figure something out." And I did. Student loans, night shifts at a diner, weekend tutoring jobs, 4 years of exhaustion. Meanwhile, Ryan drove around campus in a car my parents bought him. I didn't complain, because every time I tried to bring it up, someone would say the same thing. That's just how families work. So I swallowed the frustration and moved on. And when I finally built a career, when I started making real money, I thought maybe, just maybe, things would change. Maybe they'd finally see me. Maybe they'd finally say thank you. But that moment never came. Instead, the transfers became normal, expected, like a bill I owed just for existing. Then came last Thanksgiving. That's when everything started to unravel. I arrived late because of work. My parents' house was packed with relatives. The smell of turkey filled the air. Kids were running through the hallway.
My aunts were arguing about politics like they always do. And right in the middle of the living room sat Ryan, laughing, holding a beer, surrounded by relatives praising him. "You're such a good son," my Aunt Linda said, "sending money to help your parents every month like that." I stopped in the hallway. My brain needed a second to process what I'd just heard. Then Ryan smiled and said something that made my stomach drop. "Hey, family takes care of family." The room erupted in praise. Meanwhile, my mother sighed dramatically. "Elena's just so busy with her career, she doesn't really help out." That sentence hit harder than anything I'd ever experienced, because in that moment I realized something terrifying. They weren't just taking my money, they were taking my identity, my sacrifices, my entire role in the family, and handing the credit to someone else. I stood there holding grocery bags for almost 10 minutes, frozen like my body had forgotten how to move. My husband Jake eventually found me outside in the driveway. He took one look at my face and said something I'll never forget. "Elena, how long has this been happening?" I didn't have an answer, but that night something changed inside me. Not anger, not revenge, just clarity. For 16 years, I had been paying for love that never existed. Christmas came a few weeks later. I hoped Thanksgiving had just been a misunderstanding. Maybe people had assumed things. Maybe my parents hadn't realized what they were saying. But hope can be a dangerous thing, because hope makes you ignore the truth. That night, I overheard my mom in the kitchen telling my aunt something that erased every doubt I had left. "Elena," she laughed, "she's never helped us a day in her life." I remember standing there thinking one simple thought. All right, if that's the story they want, let's show everyone the truth. The next morning, I called my accountant. I asked for 16 years of bank records. Every transfer, every confirmation number, every receipt. It took 3 days. When the documents arrived, they filled an entire folder. 42 pages. $384,000. Every penny documented. New Year's Eve came a week later. My parents hosted a huge family party like they do every year. 30 relatives packed into the living room. Music playing, champagne flowing. My dad gave his usual speech about how hard retirement had been. Then he looked at Ryan. "Our son has been a blessing," he said proudly, "helping us every single month." That's when I stood up. The room got quiet. I walked over to the coffee table, opened my folder, and spread the papers across the table. "What's this?" my dad asked. I looked around the room, every face staring at me. 16 years of silence sitting on my shoulders. Then I said the only thing that mattered. "This is every dollar I've sent you." One by one, my relatives picked up the papers. You could literally watch the math happening in their heads. $2,000 a month? For 16 years? That's almost $400,000. The room went silent. Ryan didn't say a word. My parents couldn't even look at the documents. And for the first time in my entire life, the truth spoke for itself. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I simply closed the folder and said something that shocked everyone in the room. "Starting next month, the transfers stop." My mother gasped. My father tried to argue, but it didn't matter anymore. Because once a lie collapses in front of 30 witnesses, there's no rebuilding it. I walked out that night feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not revenge, not victory, just peace. And here's the strangest part of the story. Over the next few weeks, my phone exploded with messages. Not from my parents, from everyone else. Aunts apologizing, cousins admitting they believed the lies, even my uncle saying something that stuck with me. "Elena, the truth has a funny way of showing up right when people think they've buried it." My parents eventually called. They said they missed me. They said they made mistakes. But something inside me had already changed. Because love shouldn't require proof. Respect shouldn't require receipts. And family shouldn't need an audience to tell the truth. So now I want to ask you something. If you were in my place, would you have done the same thing? Or would you have stayed silent? Let me know in the comments. And if this story meant something to you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Because sometimes the hardest thing in the world is finally telling your own story. And sometimes that's the moment your real life finally begins.